Hi there, folks, and welcome to another episode of Michael's Backyard Marina. Well, you guys have watched the video recently where I put this gearbox back together, and I have this. It's a 1966 Mercury Merc 110. It's a 9.8 horsepower. I took this thing apart literally a couple of years ago, and just recently put the gearbox back together, and we're getting ready to put the carburetor back together that I took apart. Some of the video that you're going to be going through here is the very beginnings of this video when I started videoing this a couple years ago. You know, since then had some camera upgrades and some mic upgrades and stuff like that. But bear with me, we're going to go through this and kind of, you know, I had to go back and relive it a little bit myself to see where I left off. And so we're going to go through that part of the video. We'll pick back up. You know, you're going to see my intro, and then you're going to see the carburetor going back together toward the end. We'll get it reinstalled on here. We're going to see if it'll pop and fire. That's my hopes and dreams. Still got the impeller to put on the gearbox. We'll get the gearbox stuck back on. And please, please forgive me for saying I called this thing, well, you don't have to forgive me. It don't matter if you do or don't. I called this a foot a whole bunch 2 years ago. I don't call it that anymore. It's a gearbox. So be patient. Appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see if we can bring another one back around from many moons ago. 1966. That's 55 plus years old. So 54, 66, yeah. 57, 55, yeah. 54, 55 years old. Anyway, some engineering that's still around. And the gearbox obviously went back together. That's in great shape now. She's nice and quiet, full of gear lube, no noise. In this video, you're going to see what it was when I originally cleaned it up before I actually took it apart and put new bearings in it and all that fun stuff. Now, I'll tell you right now, Mercuries are not cheap to work on. It was well over $300 worth of parts just in this gearbox that I had to put back in. Just ordering them from, you know, the places I ordered my parts from. That's just what they cost. They're not plentiful everywhere. So, you know, it has to be something that you really want to like. More or less, if it has sentimental value, you'll invest more money in it than if it's just a customer type thing. Because it's easy to tie up a lot of money in these things. All right, on to the real intro, and we'll see you at the end of the video. Or see you somewhere back mid-video, somewhere in there, putting the carburetor back together and putting it back on the outboard. Hi folks, and welcome to this episode of Michael's Backyard Marina. Today I've got a neat little motor. It's a 1966 9.8 horse Mercury it's an old one, so that would make it a boom. How do you pronounce that? Kykoffer? Kykoffer? I don't know. Merc 110. It's a 1966. It's an oldie but a goodie. Now when this one came to me, he said it's not wanting to rev up, not getting a lot of top end out of it. Just seems like to kind of falling on its face. Sounds familiar to a Evinrude I've been working on that I ordered a fuel pump for. Now he said when he put some bulb pressure on the primer bulb, he could hear a hissing sound, and then he sprayed some soapy water around the carburetor area, and lo and behold, it was coming out around the fuel pump, he believes. So I'm going to go ahead, and this carburetor needs to come off. This is a 1966, and the retractor, the recoil for the starter recoil is not retracting properly, so that's problem number 2. Problem number 3 is I'm pretty sure that the foot hasn't been off for a while, so guarantee you that the water pump needs replacing. Anyway, we're going to get a laundry list of things we need to do for this thing and order some parts, and then we'll show you taking it apart, and we'll show you putting it back together as well, and then we'll tank test it. So let's get after this thing. First things first, let's see what we can do on that pull start, see what's going on there. Now I've gone ahead and backed the screws out of the starter housing, As usual, I started a container, put all the parts in. I just dropped something. So when you pull this, these pods are all supposed to come out evenly, but things feel a little stiff, so we're gonna flush those out. I'm pretty sure that'll take care of that problem. I'll flush them out with a little brake cleaner, and we'll give it another try. So we got water in the foot, nothing but water, not a drop of oil. We've got some wires here that are pretty nasty looking. The insulation's coming off of them right here. Those all need to be replaced. Looks like those are going to the kill switch here. These that go up to the underneath the stator area there look pretty good yet, so we need to replace those. Let's hope we don't find any other trouble here. The other issue I'm having, I took the spark plugs out just so I could roll it over freely, thinking I might be able to pop this thing out of gear. Well, this seems to be stuck in forward. I can't get it to... I can't seem to get it to come out, so that's kind of concerning. I'm worried about what I'm going to get into when I pull that foot off. Hoping it'll come off. I'm hoping something's not rusted. Let's see if we can pull that darn thing off, I guess. Well, guys, wish me luck. Take our standard 1/2-inch socket back here to pull this nut loose. Got a 9/16 one up front here. You usually have to give it a couple love taps to get her popped loose here. You want to be careful tapping on these. Tap gently. Well, it came right loose. Nice. Finished taking the nut off, but you got to knock loose a little bit here. Should be able to drag it the rest of the way out here. Everything looks complete here. That's a good sign. Nothing missing other than the oil that was supposed to be in the bottom. Now before I start messing with this one, I want to get in here and show you guys something. Look at this cavity here. This cavity goes down pretty deep and just chock full of sand. Chocked clear full of sand. I'm not sure what it is. This would be the third lower unit on a Mercury that pulled apart like this. It's the sand is just all buried up in there like that. And I always flush that out very thoroughly before I do anything else, before I start taking this apart, because I don't want sand to get in anything like the bearings. Once I pull this piece off, I want to replace the seals and stuff there. I don't want anything getting down in the bearings that shouldn't be there. So let's pull this bad boy. Let's flush it and then we'll pull it apart. All right, we're gonna go ahead and pull this cover off. There's still, I flushed all the sand I could out of this thing where I could see it down around the housing. When I pulled this tube off, there was still some sand in there. This thing's got sand everywhere. Don't run your outboards in sand. These are designed to run in water, folks. So we got this little rubber piece that sits on top of this seal. At least this one still has it. We'll slide that off. Shaft is actually in pretty clean shape. Not rusty. I've seen a few of these get a little bit rusty. So we're gonna see if we can pop this off gently. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Packed. Full of sand. You know that impeller ain't gonna look too pretty. Let's see if we can slip this plate off of here and look inside. More sand. Think this impeller will come out of there? Let's go ahead and get this tube lifted out of here. Sometimes these don't like to give up too easily. Oh, that one came right up. All right, I think that'll be an easy one then. Let's go ahead and pick it on out of there. Look at that thing, how it's stuck. That is stuck so messed up. Needs replaced for sure. Now this here is where you want to gently pry up on both of here. You can pick this up out of there. And that's why we flushed all that sand out of there, because we don't want sand getting down there. We're getting ready to expose a bearing here. Let's get my handy dandy little screwdrivers here, and we'll get where we can gently pry up on this. It should just pop right loose. You just wiggle it. Just give it a little wiggle back and forth. And what we gotta also do is make sure we get that key out of the way. We'll just pop that around the corner there. It'll come out with the housing then. We'll just ever so gently slide this up and try to keep any of that dirt and sand from getting down inside that case. There we go. Now, the bottom of this housing, see all that black stuff all up around there? That's not supposed to be there. That almost looks like something started spinning in there and melted this housing. This is going to need a new housing, unfortunately. Good news is the bearings look clean and not pitted or rusty. So we might have got that water out of there in time. I'm going to flip this thing over and flush it one more time just to make sure I get all this little bit of dirt out of here upside down so it doesn't go down in the housing. Ever so gently. Now I've taken some brake cleaner and flushed out the bearings. And I put my drill on here just to kind of those gears do not sound lovely. They might be a little dry, but they're not going to be sounding that rough typically. I'm going to dump some oil down in there and see if I can get her to quieten up while she's spinning. I just filled that thing full of oil from the bottom. Flooding it from the bottom. I think somebody might have ruined this. We got a plumb dome full of oil. The other thing I can't get it to do is change direction. That thing isn't touching anything down there. The whole seal is moving with it. She's stuck in whatever gear it's stuck in. Oh, there I got it. There's a neutral. Oh. Yeah, we're going to have to mess with this a little bit more because that's a... The output shaft is also bent. It's running out. As you can see, you watch the prop run out here. You see that running out right there? So that shaft is, we're probably going to take this whole bottom part apart, see what's going on inside there. Something's failed. There is no reverse. There is no gear engagement. And that's probably why I couldn't get it to move on the lever. It's because it was stuck till I broke it free here. And she's still stuck. So we got kind of a little bit of a hot mess here. I almost hate to get into this any deeper, but I think we're gonna have to pull the carburetor off to get that fuel pump. We'll take this whole carburetor fuel pump assembly off. And rebuild that carb. Before I do that though, I'm gonna check compression on this thing, because without compression, I'm just wasting money. So we're gonna check compression. Wow. Oh, 120. That's good. $120. Got some great compression. Like this one guy I watched on this old outboard, I'll use his phrase, if you got compression, the rest of it's just a pain in the butt. Bottom line is, I think we can make the top end work. Question is going to be if I can make the bottom end work. We may have to find a donor motor for, or donor bottom end for that, because if the gears are shot, I'm not sure what's available for these things anymore, so we'll have to check it out for a 1966. Stay tuned. Well, we're going to go ahead and take the carburetor and fuel pump off now, and we're going to go through that and take a look and see what's going on inside there. Looks to me like I need to pull this float. There's a screen here. The float's down below, but there's a screen in here with the carb attached. So I believe if I pull this loose and this loose, I can get this out of the way so I can access the nut to get to the carburetor, and then we can dissect it all. Now here we have the fuel pump taken apart. This is like the simplest fuel pump I've ever seen in a while. There's a membrane and a gasket, and that's pretty much it. I will look at the exploded diagram to make sure somebody else didn't leave something out, but this seems pretty original. But the valuable lesson I want you to listen to and take note of here is I've taken this apart and I've laid it out in the order it came apart, and which way I know it's going to go back together, because you could easily get this diaphragm on the wrong side when you reassemble it. Next thing you know, it doesn't work at all like it should work. Same way with the carburetor. Now these carburetors are extremely simple. There's going to be a couple of screws to pull out here, a nut to pull out here, another orifice on top here, like a little Phillips screw to blow it out and clean it out. Now I smell the gas in here, and it smells spoiled. So I know for a fact this motor hasn't ran in a long time. For gas to actually spoil this day and age, especially, well, I suppose it could spoil quicker if it's an ethanol maybe, but if you're using just a straight regular gas with no ethanol, you shouldn't be using alcohol in any of these old outboards anyway. It should be all just regular fuel with the two-stroke mix in it. And I prefer a synthetic two-stroke myself, because the oils are so much better in protecting and lubricating. Even though everything that it touches, it helps lubricate better, even if it's not a bearing, like in the crankcase in the motor. So anyway, I just wanted to make a special note of this. This is how this carburetor came apart. Now I can see the gaskets that it's going to require for me to order. When I'm searching for a gasket kit or just the individual pieces, sometimes you can't even order kits, you can only get pieces. I know exactly what I'm looking for now, and the number of pieces that need to go there. I can also go and look on diagrams online and decide whether if it is missing parts or not. So far we've disassembled all the components that I want to disassemble on this thing, other than the starter pull rope that's not engaging properly. We'll dig into that probably in a little bit here. But now at least I can go in. I know everything I need for the foot. Not the foot, but at least the water pump. The gearbox is still something is amiss there. It's not engaging, it's not shifting forward or reversed. It's stuck in forward. And I got to figure out what's going on there. Plus the gears are all growly inside, so I'm pretty sure it was ran with just water in it, it had water in it with no lube in it, and I'm sure it took something out. So I'm gonna have to end up taking that gearbox apart, and it'll be one of the first Mercury gearboxes I've gotten into. They don't look too complicated, but it'll be the first one, so I'll bring you guys right along with me and we'll learn together. All right, let's give Mr. 6-horse Mercury a little spark test here and see if we got something. Wow, good spark on the top cylinder. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Say it ain't so, Joe. 1 out of 2, Boogaloo. It's doing something, but it is so weak. I have a feeling we have a connection problem. And if this thing has points, my guess is one set of points might be bad. I believe this would be a point system. Let's see what we got in the dark here. Yeah, I'm seeing something, but it ain't strong at all. Now, back here at the carburetor, these are a very simple carburetor. All right, we have the carburetor fully disassembled and cleaned, blown through. Every orifice is clear and doing exactly what it should be doing. One of the ones I want to point out to you, this little guy here has a little tiny hole right there. I know my hands are all dried out from brake clean, but look at that. That's such a tiny little fella there. So we'll go ahead and put him back in first. That goes right back in the top here. Give that a little bit of a snugging. And then another plug. There's another jet. Hang on, let's get it all straightened out here. There's another guy that goes right in here. We want to make sure that this one I haven't cleaned up yet, so I'm going to need to spray it clean because it's got a little gunk on it. This little guy goes right up in here. There's another one, that one that just went through the top. This one goes in the bottom and goes around that other one, so you got to have a small enough screwdriver to go in there and install this one back in. Once that's in place, then we can put our bottom plug back in. Like that plug right there. Give that a little snugging. Just look underneath this one to make sure there wasn't anything there blocking. Everything looks pretty clear there. Then underneath here, there's another little tiny jet. Real tiny thing with a little washer on it. And it comes off a little cone shaped when you take the old one out because this thing here is cone shaped. And that'll just drop right back down in here. Hopefully. Looks pretty good. That's snugged up. And then this little guy here, the plug goes back over to cover that jet. Where'd it go? Right here. And we'll tighten that up. Then you got your air mixture screw here. You want to make sure it's just nice and clean. And we're going to stick that right back in here. And you want to take it down until it's bottomed out. Gently bottom it out. Right there it's bottomed out. I'm going to go out half, 1, 1.5. That's a good starting point. As far as the old float goes, drop that right down in there like that. Then you got your float assembly, which has a gasket. Go ahead and carve this one off. Da-da-da-da. Nice. It comes off in one piece. Wait a minute. There we go. You want to make sure this surface here is nice and clean. No leftover gasket on it. Put our new gasket on here. I wonder if I'm putting that in right. Yep. That goes in there. New gasket's on. Stick that back on there like that. We got one longer screw and one shorter screw. It's actually a pretty nice little float setup. Pretty simple. Now you may not think it here. This one here had a gasket that looked like this on it. That was down in here. Looked like not a gasket, but it was. It's just, it's a dried out piece of cork, hard as a rock. Then you got your screen, filter screen that's going to go over here. And then you'll have your, this guy here will go in here. What came off looked like just two gaskets, but there's actually three. There's one right here that's stacked up on top of the other one. And this goes toward the, this is what a hook, this goes up to the crankcase ventilation area, which causes it to pulse. So you want your thick gasket against there. You can see some of the witness of how it used to on the old gasket. See how it sat on there? That's a good indicator. That sat on there like that. Then the next one sat on here just like this with the hole lined up with this upper hole here. And then you got your little thin membrane. And you can see how it's kind of bulged around right here. That'll also go right around this round portion as well. And then this side goes in just like, it just sandwiches it all together here. And you can put your screws back in. Being careful not to damage your membrane there. And what you probably noticed that when you had to take this apart, that this little cup was in the way. And you can carefully spin it counterclockwise out of your way. A little more to get your screws in. Then you can spin it back around when you're getting ready to install it back onto the machine. We'll just tighten up these 4 screws, and we're going back on the power head with it. All right, that's the fuel pump. Long and the short, that's the fuel pump put back together. There's just not a lot to it. So now let's go. We got these pieces. We'll go slip this all back together, and it's kind of a little wrestling match, I'll be honest with you, to get it in there. But I'll show you kind of what I did. There, that fits a little bit better. What I had to do with this is I kind of had to sneak this guy in through here, because everything's just tight. It's tight. Then once that's in there, you can kind of wiggle things around a little bit, and getting this first stud through here is the trick. Once you get that one down in there, you kind of have to flex things just a little bit with this hose. That's what I noticed. Once you get that in there, then that slips right up into place. Now you can see this is pointing the wrong way, so I'll turn it back clockwise to the direction it's supposed to be. And you can kind of I like to loose fit it, because this is going to be around over here somewhere, tucked around behind, because you got to miss the shift shaft. It's got to be clear out of the way of the shift shaft. So I keep bringing it around till I can get that back in position to where it was. This will be up on the carburetor. This will be snug down tight like that. And shift shaft's got to pass by it. So when you're shifting over here, I know you can't see it very well. It's over on this side. So this guy here, when it's all tightened down, right here, you're looking right here, this piece, that's got to, and on this model, that's forward and back, and that's reverse. It's the opposite on these guys. I don't know why they did that. You think forward, forward, reverse, reverse, but for whatever reason, they designed it differently. So now you got the luxury of trying to put this barb here back on the hose, back behind all this stuff, and you got to get this back on. It's just a freaking nightmare. Mercury, it didn't have to be like this. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put the nuts on here and hold this up tight for me. And you can see the throttle when you're in, let's see here. Yeah, we're in reverse here. You can see how the throttle linkage is going to work right here. Getting you to wide open throttle. All right. Yes, you can get it once you're in reverse here. You can easily get that hose back in place. So we're going to go ahead and put our screen in here. Let's do that right now. I'm going to pull you back around here a little bit. So we got our little gasket that goes down in here. And we got a gasket that goes up into this top part here. So there's your screen there. See if we can get it stuck back together here. Like that. And then we'll get our screw in top here and squish it all together. But before we do all that, we gotta tighten up those nuts here, because you can't get at them once this is in place. It's a fun one, guys. Okay, we've got the two 7/16, well, they're 7/16 wrench on these nuts here. Got those both tightened. That's all in place now. And now we want to put we got our gasket in the top, cork, and we got our spring here. We can now get this back on top, hopefully. Get that snuck back into place. Then we'll be able to put this bolt back in here and cinch it all together. And that'll be assembled. There is a little gasket between this nut, or this bolt, and this housing here too. So everything just gets sandwiched down in there. All right, carburetor's back on. All we got left to do is put the hose on that's on the back side, which is the inlet to the fuel pump. But it's not the inlet for the fuel, it's the inlet for the compression. You know, it's, I don't know what you want to call it. The crankcase pressure passes through this hose to activate the diaphragm to pump the fuel into the bowl, which then fills up and then does its carburetor things, magic in here, like it's supposed to do. All right, we got this one all back together, carburetor-wise. We got the little choke mechanism put back in place. And we got this, the fuel filter housing back on. We got the fuel pump back on. We got the hose hook back up. So that all should work like it should. You go into forward gear, you'll notice you can only turn the throttle this far. And then if you go to neutral, same thing. It won't let you go quite as far. You go to, whoops, I'm in the wrong one. There we go. There's neutral. There's reverse. And then forward, let you crank her and get her in a wide open throttle. So all that seems to be working like it should. Unfortunately, right here, typical Mercury wiring, where this wiring is actually held up pretty good. That's going up underneath here. But the kill switch wires that go down to here, they are completely rotted. The casing's completely rotted. And I'm not going to dig into it any further. unless the guy wants to pay more money to get something like this fixed. You know, we've already invested quite a bit in here. This I only have spark on the top cylinder, not the bottom. Could it be up under here? Could it be related to this wire here that's killing it? I don't know. I'm not going to mess with any of this. I'm just going to, my job here is to reassemble it. And then, you know, he can decide what he wants to do from there. But it does have compression, does have spark on the top. Carburetor's rebuilt. The gearbox is rebuilt. All we have left to do on here is put the water pump back in, put the water pump housing back on, and then bolt this back onto the bottom of the outboard, and then it's all back together. We're not going to hear this one run, unfortunately, but at least we learned a lot about this particular outboard. It needs a few more things. All it needs really right now is to get spark established on the bottom cylinder, and I'm pretty confident it'll run really well. Most of these, that once you get them all put back together, they do run quite well. So let's go ahead and get the old impeller back in here. Then we'll put the housing on it, and then we'll put the gearbox back on. Now I wanted to share some part numbers with you. We got this water pump kit here for this particular one. This came from oldmercs.com, 47-89981T1. That's the part number for the kit. This is what the kit comes with, a new impeller. As you can see, the old impeller looks something like this. A little bit, where am I at here? As you can see, the old impeller looked a lot like this. This is what a new one looks like, should look like. This is all the stuff that comes in the kit. New plate, new tube to guide your copper tube down into your pump, O-ring, a new key. So that's what comes with that. The carburetor kit, I want to share some part numbers with you on that. So this was the gasket kit. Carburetor gasket kit was a 1399-1717. I'm not leaving links below for this. You guys are going to have to just write it down. And where'd the other one go? I had another package here called the diaphragm kit. It had a part number on it. Okay, as you can see now, we've got the impeller in there. We've got there's a stainless plate that goes on top of the impeller that looks like this. Has these little tabs turned up and one turned down. So that ensures that you can only put it in one way and get this to go together. Pretty simple. The impeller is kind of a pain because on this particular one, you have to get it lined up with your key. I put a little lube on it and I have to shove it down in there. And then I grab the shaft here and I rotate it clockwise, looking from the top down. I rotate it clockwise to make sure all the impellers are bent in the right direction. They would self-correct even if they weren't in the right direction, but it's just go ahead and do it so you know it's in the right spot. So we got our guide tube on, like I said, for the copper tube to go into. We've greased our shift shaft spline. We've greased the drive shaft spline up here. We've also taken this, we put this in forward, so we know we're in forward gear here. That'll help the splines line up to where they need to on here. And you know you're in forward here when you can turn the drive shaft clockwise. You can also see this is locked in clockwise as well. Now we're ready to put the gearbox, attach it back to the outboard. And we're going to do that next. Let's just see how much of a wrestling match this turns into. So now that we have everything set, staged to go in, we're going to see if we can get this finagled up in there. Get a couple of bolts put back in place. There's one nut here and one nut here. That's it. That holds this thing together. Once that's together, we're done. Alrighty, we're going to see if we can get this thing snuck back up in there. So let's just give it a whirl. Nice thing about these is they're really, really light. All right, folks, my battery died when I was putting the gearbox back on, but you know, I got that thing angled up in there. A couple little bumps, it went right up into place. The shifter works like it's supposed to on the shift lever. Forward, reverse, neutral. Seems to be everything's there in pretty good shape. So I'm going to come clean on this particular 1966 Mercury 9.8. Got a confession for you, everybody, all my viewers out there. You know, a lot of you have asked me, sent me messages and go, hey, are you local? Are you nearby? Can you work on my outboard? I'm like, I don't do customer work. I just don't do it. And this one is the one and only customer work since I started this channel that I've done. And there's a reason why I don't do customer work. It's not because customers are horrible. No, that's not it at all. It is I don't want to be burdened by having to have deadlines and people calling me and people, when can I have my outboard done and stuff like that. Now, this gentleman, this has been over 2 years ago. And this is another reason why I don't do customer work, because I'm not inspired by it. I don't feel, I don't know, it's not motivating for me, and I can't tell you why. That must be an X or Z chromosome that's like put in backwards. I don't know. But this one guy did reach out to me that, you know, I'd call him fairly local. Said, hey, I got one. That was my, I think it was his, I'm going to get this wrong. I think it was his stepdad's outboard. Had some sentimental value. And I said, okay, I'll take a look at it. Well, I took a look at it, and I told him back then that, you know, we can get into this thing, and it can get very expensive. And he's like, that's fine. And, you know, people can put a lot of money towards sentimental value. I totally get that. You want to have it up and running and all that fun stuff. This one, we are very close. So what happened when he dropped this off, I got into it, as you saw in the beginning of this video, started looking into it, seeing what it was and what it was about. You know, it's got good compression. It's missing spark on the lower cylinder. It's got some wires that have some corrosion, and the gearbox. Well, got compression. The rest of it's just kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt, right? The gearbox, that gets rather expensive rather quick. Well, I took it all apart, and then, you know, not too long after that, we had 2020 hit, right? And everybody knows what happened in 2020. Well, I got the whole parts list put together, found all the bearings from different suppliers, and it took literally over 6 months just to get all the seals and bearings and little, you know, pieces to put that gearbox back together. Well, in that meantime, I've had this sitting over in a corner somewhere with all the parts, all the pieces in a container, so I didn't lose any parts or pieces. Had the carburetor tore apart. Ordered the carb kit back then as well. But finally, you know, I went on vacation. He had some things going on in his family. He finally reached out to me about a month and a half ago, probably going on 6 weeks ago, honestly, maybe a little longer, and said, hey, you know, I'm thinking about going in a different direction on that outboard. Can I come pick it up? And I said, let me get your gearbox back together. So we did a video on putting it back together. And that one guy caught it where I took another 9.8 or 9.9 gearbox apart, and I put this one back together. And the difference was the way the forward and reverse was on the shift lever down in the gearbox. This one's kind of wonky because you peel it up and backwards to go forward. You pull it forward and down basically to go in reverse. Just opposite of what every other outboard is out there in the market. So I got the gearbox back together and needed a water pump. I said, hey, can you give me 1 more week? The water pump, I thought I had it ordered. I didn't. I spent another $35 on a water pump. And at this point, we're at $359 roughly, I think it is, or $57. And he had sent me a check a long time ago, paid for all those parts. So, you know, he's been awesome to deal with. And obviously, 2 years very patient. Didn't have any immediate need for this anyway, so it wasn't that big a deal. So yeah, so you take that 200 or 350 some bucks, and then you put another $36 water pump kit on it that I just bought recently. I'm not asking him to pay for that piece because, you know, it's been a minute, right? And but anyway, that's why you're not going to see this one run. But everything we did here, I would think would give somebody the confidence to see things coming apart and going back together. Same with the gearbox. That's one of the scary ones for a lot of people, is that gearbox. Carburetors are scary for people, but it is just nuts and bolts, folks. It's nuts and bolts. Anyway, this is why, you know, this is the one and only customer work that I'm ever going to do. I don't ever plan on doing anything for other people. That sounds terrible. Everything you see me work on is things that I've collected and I own. And I can decide whether I'm putting money into it or not. A few things I sell when I get them running. Now my son will say, yeah, you don't sell enough. He ain't wrong. I've got over, well, you guys seen my yard barn. I've got over 40 outboards laying around here that I want to get running. And I just make the outboards my winter project for indoor stuff in the winter. And I've been focusing a lot this summer on the inboards outside, right? On the big boats and stuff like that, because that's an opportunity to work on things outside, go test it out, and do all that kind of fun stuff. So, but that's the whole story why you won't see this one run. You know, even if the guy right now sent me a message, and this is the God's honest truth, he sent me a message, hey, I want to give you another $300. Do what you got to do to get the spark into this thing and get her running for me. I would probably say no. And I say that not to be mean, but this one's camped out here long enough, and I don't want to do any more customer work, even if this guy has been fantastically patient. Can't say enough about this gentleman. But it's time for this to go back to him. He said he's got an outboard guy that works on these old, because there's not a lot of people that work on these old things. But I'll be able to tell him that, you know, you get your guy to fix those wires on the side and pull the flywheel, see what's going on underneath there to find out why there's not spark. The upper cylinder's got a strong spark. Lower cylinder's got zero. So he gets that going. I have all the confidence in the world, everything I've done here. Pull it a couple times, it'll run. Make a couple of carburetor adjustments possibly, and she'll be ready to go back on the water for quite a while. But this is where we're leaving it. So that's my confession. My one and only customer work. Now you've seen me work on other people's stuff. When I say other people's, my granddaughter's car, or you know, her Jeep and stuff, when we did some things on that. But pretty much everything else, the big green boat, that was my boat that I was working on, and my buddy wanted to trade me something for it, so that's what we did. We did a trade. And so he helped with the labor on getting that thing put back on it. You might have seen him appear in a couple of videos there. And we got that out there, and he's had it out there and enjoyed it a couple times on the lake this fall. I think he's got big plans for bringing it out in the water a lot next summer. And same with me. I got a lot of activities I want to do early next summer. I'm not going to wait till midsummer to get my boats on the water. I'm going to make sure I set my priorities so that I'm enjoying the water with my boats, getting you guys some more of that awesome drone footage with my son, and let's just keep the channel going. But this one's leaving the building tomorrow, heading back to its rightful owner, and then I can focus on all my other stuff and not have this one in the back of my mind. You know, when you have something like this laying around, it weighs on your mind, not heavily, because as I said, this guy's been very patient. It's not like he sent me a message every week. We'd go months without sending a message back and forth. No, he's been fantastic. But as you've seen, I jump around to different things. I'll focus on this for a minute, and then then my interest goes over here. I have, let's just call it hobby ADD. I have attention deficit disorder when it comes to my hobbies. I can't just focus and get one thing done. I'm distracted very easily with this one, and I'm like, oh, I'm curious about that, and then I'll pull this apart. And what slows me down and keeps me honest is being able to video for you folks out there and get you guys some content. You know, the hopes and dreams is this channel grows big enough to, you know, do more of this stuff, get more, buy more, experiment more, buy some of the different stuff we haven't messed with yet. And you guys had, one of the guys out there, or gals, I can't remember which, asked, hey, I want to see a complete, you know, Mercruiser tear down and rebuild. Me too. But I got to have a candidate for it. I got to have an engine that isn't running well, or maybe it has a blown head gasket or something that requires me to just go and dig in, and it's like, let's pull her down and put her back up. Now, what you run into out there with people that are working on boats, period, and how I find them for the $300 that I found 3 of them for, and I'm always scoping and looking, because there's always a diamond in the rough when it comes to these old Iron Dukes. And I happen to have 2 out of my 4 I have here are running very, very well. I have a lot of confidence I can get the other 2 running, and we'll be doing that one. You know, getting those up and going here before you know it. I've got a special, I wouldn't call it a special treat, I got a special project. And I've talked about it in a few other videos about creating a case or some kind of, let's just call it almost like a jump pack, that I can walk up to one of these inline, I'm pointing over here and over here because that's where they're at, to my left and my right. These old, and maybe a 6-cylinder the same way, inline 6, where I can go in here and plug my plug into these plugs that are on these motors, and then I take my cables that are coming out of this particular, let's call it jump pack, and plug it onto a battery, and I've got a key switch and all the gauges, and I bypass everything on the boat. So I can go and do some quick research on something out in the field and see if I can get it running out in the field, and maybe do some of these, I'm going to call them field rescues. There's some channels out there that are doing some pretty cool stuff as far as they're able to, you know, go out and find a car 200, 300, 700 miles away from home that hadn't ran for many years and get it running and bring it home. Well, my thoughts, I get to thinking, and I thought, well, if I had myself kitted up pretty well, that I could go out to an unlocation, film on location, and run through some of the processes I run through on these things and see if we can get it running remotely. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think it'd add a new dimension to the channel. You guys leave comments below if you think that would be a good idea, because I can easily do that. Now, am I going to be driving the boats home? No. But it would be fun to see what a guy can do, which you know, out in the middle of, let's call it nowhere. We can park this, you know, we can park at a truck stop and work on this, or do something crazy like that, and take enough stuff with you that you can get one of these guys running and test it out, you know, as far as how it runs, before you drag it all the way home even. I think it'd be fun. And that would give you guys at home confidence to go, well, if he can do that in a parking lot 200 miles from home with what he has for tools, that should give you the confidence that you might be able to do the same thing. So just some things I'm thinking about. Leave comments below. All of you that's been watching and following me for as many years as you have so far, much appreciated. Enjoy the comments. Great tech tips I get from a lot of you guys. I just did the NoCo Genius battery charger video not too long ago from when you'll see this video, and one guy left a very good amount of information for me on how I should store my lithium batteries, and because they don't like to be stored fully charged. So I'm like, well, that's cool. So I can deplete them down, bring them down to where he said something like at 23%. Don't be afraid to leave comments below supporting that. But yeah, they like to be stored low, not fully charged, if you want them to last. It would be neat to see some of that information directly from Dakota Lithium. I didn't see it in any of the literature that I saw. Maybe it's there. Maybe I missed it. But what else we got? I think that's about it. But anyway, I just had that confession to get off my chest, to share with my audience that, you know, I'm human too. And it's never too late to get things back done and right. And we'll go from there. But yeah, this is a sweet little 9.8 twin from 1966. It's the old Mercury. It's a Kykoffer Mercury. It's the Merc 110 they call it, which on the side it's a 9.8. Somebody corrected me on one of the videos, said that's a 9.8, not a 9.9. I'm like, you ain't wrong. But 9.9, 9.8, 10, it's potatoes to a certain degree, right? Alrighty, well guys, I got some other stuff I need to get into. I need to get some more, we're having some fun out here. I need to work through this space in my shop to free up, to get a few motors running, ready to sell next spring, and just to make some space, because I got I got my Jeep I got to get in here. I got a drive shaft and possible wheel bearing going out on. I need to get that done. I got the other Jeep that's got a heater core going out, and that's an absolute nightmare. From what I've been seeing, you got to pull the entire dash out of that vehicle. Or do I? There might be some, I might have to do some research and see if there's a place to go in and let's just cut. I'm not afraid to cut on that thing to gain access to what I need and pull it out through a different hole in the vehicle. I'm not married to the condition it's in. So, all right, the shop's coming around. We've been cleaning up here, organizing. Oh, update on the old 2007 Jeep Liberty radiator patch. If anybody's watched that video where I put the JB Weld on top of the radiator where there was a small leak, still going. I still got the brand new radiator over here in the box. I put over 1,000 miles on it that way, towing boats and to and from the lake and from other, well, I towed 3 of them home with it in that condition from several miles away. And still working, still holding tight. So, JB Weld to the rescue. I'm just going to run it until it pops. Because as soon as I put this radiator in, it starts aging. But if I put it in a year from now, we're golden. We can go another year on the other end then maybe. I don't know. All right. Well, you guys have fun out there. Thank you for listening to my confession and all my verbiage. Enjoy some drone footage here at the end of this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with other friends. This is Michael saying if it ain't broke, fix it till it is. We'll see you on the other side.